In our previous lesson, we got to understand how and why Napoleon came to power in France. We discussed how the Republican government was very inefficient and incompetent, and it is for this power that after the bloodless coup of 1799 that Napoleon replaced that inefficient Republican government with the new consulate government. In the year 1804, Napoleon crowned himself as the Emperor of France. So, from this began Napoleon's journey as the Emperor of France. He organized an official ceremony where he had called the Pope of the Catholic Church of France to preside this official ceremony. Now, when the Pope and other people had gathered for this official ceremony to be held, to everyone's surprise, Napoleon took the crown and placed it on his head himself. By this act, he meant that while he respected religion and he called the Pope to that official ceremony, he was a self-made ruler. Which is why this self-made emperor put the crown on his head himself. He did not wait for the Pope or anyone to crown him as the Emperor of France. He was a self-made Emperor of France. On account of his ambition, his resilience, his courage, his power, he became the Emperor of France in 1804. We just discussed that in 1804, Napoleon crowned himself as the Emperor of France. Now, this might sound very contradictory to you. Napoleon coming to power was an obvious extension of the French Revolution. Why is it so? Because he himself was inspired by the ideas of liberty, equality and fraternity, and through this French Revolution he came to power. He opposed the French monarchical rule and the estate system that was in place. Now, after coming to power, he made the consulate government and himself became the Emperor of France. Now, this person, who can be considered an offspring of the revolution, crowned himself as the emperor. Napoleon was protesting against the monarchical rule. But out of everything, why did he become the Emperor of France? This is because in 1804, when Napoleon became the Emperor of France, he mentioned that his being an emperor will be very different from the French monarchy that was in place before the French Revolution. So, he was in no way similar to the French monarch, that was King Louis XVI, who was ruling before the outbreak of the French Revolution. Now, Napoleon was a different kind of emperor. He mentioned that his being an emperor was a logical extension of the French Revolution. In a way, he meant that he himself is the revolution, which is why this reads that the revolution is over, I am the revolution. That is, Napoleon himself is the revolution. He embodied the ideals of the revolution. Now, it is required on our part to understand to what extent Napoleon embodied the ideals, the spirit of the French Revolution. Prior to the French Revolution, you must be remembering that feudalism was prevalent in the French society. What does feudalism mean? Feudalism meant that the French society was divided into separate feudal estates. Now, these feudal estates were under the charge of the feudal lords. Now, different feudal lords had different way of controlling their feudal estates, which is why they had their own sets of rules. Here you can see, this roughly shows you the map of France prior to the outbreak of the French Revolution. Separate feudal estates had separate laws. These laws were very different, which is why there was no one codified law. no one law that applied to all the citizens of France. In the absence of a uniform law in France, there was a non-uniform, unequal and non-codified law. There were many laws that were existing simultaneously in France, which is why trade was disrupted. Prior to the French Revolution, power dynamics were very unequal in France. The feudal lords exercised all their power and the people of the third estate were exploited. There was no one codified law that could have been applied to all the citizens of the country, which is why trade was disrupted. Traders could not freely and smoothly trade between these various estates. Now, what did Napoleon do to bring an end to this non-uniform law structure? That is, the absence of one codified law throughout the country. Let us now try to understand that. After the French Revolution and after Napoleon came to power, in France there now came into being one law. In the previous image, you saw how different laws were imposed in different parts of the same country. Now, France had one uniform law that would apply to all the citizens of the country. So, there was now an uniform and equal law. This one codified uniform and equal law now became the law of France that would govern all the people of France. This one codified law will not differentiate people on the basis of their social hierarchy, on the basis of their social ranks, on the basis of their social classes. This was a major administrative decision on the part of Napoleon that he implemented while he came to power. Now, what did he do to standardize one uniform law for France? In the year 1804, Napoleon introduced a new code of civil laws. This new code of civil laws later came to be known as the Napoleonic Code. With this Napoleonic Code, there now came into being one uniform codified civil law that would govern the lives of all the people of France. This Napoleonic Code that came into being in 1804 has been very important, not just from the perspective of France, but it was important throughout the world. Now, why was its importance so long lasting? As in, why was the Napoleonic Code important for other parts of the world as well? Let us now try to understand that. Now, before we get into discussing what this Napoleonic Code meant and how it governed the lives of all the people of France and how important it was for other parts of the world as well, let me ask you a question. When did Napoleon introduce this new code of civil laws? Was it in the year 1802 or 1804 or 1805 or 1806? Yes, you are right. Napoleon introduced this new code of civil laws or the Napoleonic Code in the year 1804. In our previous lessons, where we traced the background of the French Revolution, we discussed the concepts of liberty, equality and fraternity. Eventually, these became the clarion call for the French Revolution. These ideas were birthed out of this French Revolution. Now, Napoleon, as an offspring of the French Revolution, was also inspired by these ideas, which is why he brought these ideas together and codified them into a single law, a single codified law that took the shape of the Napoleonic Code. Through making this Napoleonic Code the standard law for the people of France, Napoleon's popularity increased even further. It is at this point that the people realized that this person, this leader of theirs, was embodying the very ideals of the French Revolution. Ideals as in the concepts of liberty, equality and fraternity. The people of France realized that Napoleon was not a power-hungry tyrant. Instead, he was embodying the very spirit of the French Revolution, which is why he codified the Napoleonic Code. While discussing the French Revolution, we also talked about how the National Assembly abolished privileges and feudalism. But it was with the Napoleonic Code that Napoleon finally put an end to the estate system. So, from this, the estate system was no longer in being. It ceased to exist. Napoleon was striving to make the French society free of social classes, free of the estate system where the higher estates, that is the first and the second estates, exploited the vulnerable third estate. He was striving to make the French society free of this hierarchy, free of these divisions, which is why he made this Napoleonic Code, that is this set of standardized and codified law that would apply equally to all the citizens. Now, this was a major breakthrough moment in the history of France, because for centuries on end, the people of the third estate and mostly the peasants, the poor people, were exploited by the first and the second estates. They had to pay arbitrary taxes to not just the state but also to the other two estates. Along with that, they also had to render forced unpaid labor. And there was no one law that would apply to all the people of France. So, invariably, the third estate was very badly exploited. But it is only with the formation of the Napoleonic Code in 1804 that now came into being a standard code of law for France. So, this Napoleonic Code did away with privileges. Privileges as in the privileges that were founded on feudalism. Along with that, it also established a revolutionary principle. What is that principle? This Napoleonic Code stated that all the people would be equal before the law. So, one set of law would govern people from different sections of the society. This Napoleonic Code meant that laws will not be different for people who belong to the higher social classes, and it will not discriminate against people who belong to the lower social classes. This setup was prevalent prior to the French Revolution, where there was no one codified law. Now, with the Napoleonic Code, there was one law before which all the citizens of France would be equal. The sustaining importance of the Napoleonic Code is for various reasons. Few of such reasons would be that this Napoleonic Code gave effect to principles like individual liberty. Individual liberty as in all the citizens of France would now have the liberty to live their lives in their own way. Along with that, it also assured the freedom of work, which means that people could work on their own terms without being dictated by others or without being forced to render unpaid labor. This is something that happened before the revolution, and it is with this Napoleonic Code now people got the freedom of work. Alongside assuring the freedom of work, the Napoleonic Code also protected private property. So, the people of France could now enjoy individual liberty, freedom of work, alongside being able to protect their own private property. Can you imagine how revolutionary Napoleon's ideas were? These ideas were so liberal. These ideas took into account the requirements of the masses. Napoleon initially started off as a person who was not meant to exploit the masses, who was not a power-hungry tyrant. It is for this reason that Napoleon's influence and popularity kept growing among the masses. Prior to the French Revolution, arbitrary laws were made by the French monarchy, and those were imposed on the people who did not even have a say in this. Now, after this Napoleonic code was enforced, any law before being officially drafted needed to be officially announced. Announced as in the law needed to be made public to everyone. If the government informs everyone that one law is going to be implemented, this will ensure that all the people know what is going to happen to them, so that they have some kind of a participation in the process of the implementation of the law. It will not come as very senseless or arbitrary to them. So, this Napoleonic code made it necessary to make all laws officially announced and public, and it also stated that these laws would uniformly apply to everyone. So, no individual would be discriminated on the basis of anything before these laws. Before the French Revolution, the practice that was in place was the king is the law. That is, whatever the king said was announced as the law of the state. So, the king was the final, the ultimate sovereignty, the ultimate power over the land. Now, after the French Revolution, after Napoleon came to power and after this Napoleonic code was enforced, it now became different. This principle was now reversed. It took the shape of something like the law is the king. So, this Napoleonic code, or this one standard law that governed all the people of France, was now the king. So, the king is no more the law. Instead, now, after the civil codes or the Napoleonic codes were enforced, the law became the king of the land. All these decisions, all these changes that Napoleon implemented after the French Revolution brought him sustaining popularity. Along with that, he was also in the process of restoring political stability in France, something that the Republican governments could never do. This Napoleonic code is of great importance to us when today we try to understand the history of 17th century France, because this Napoleonic code was the first modern legal code. Before this kind of a legal code was not enforced in any country. Most countries were under the rule of monarchs or emperors. Now it is in France that Napoleon first enforced this codified standard set of laws that was called the Napoleonic Code. And for this reason, this Napoleonic Code became the first modern legal code. All these reasons together make the Napoleonic Code very, very crucial in the pages of history. Since the Napoleonic Code was one of its kind, it was the first modern legal code, it inspired the legal systems of many countries in not just Europe but across the world. So, it served as the inspiration for the legal systems of many such countries. Many countries, as in the areas that are marked in green in this map, show the countries that continued to use Napoleonic Code even after 1815. The areas that are marked brownish in this map show the countries where Napoleonic Code was used as a basis for civil code. And the countries that are marked in orange in this map show those countries where Napoleonic Code was a major influence on laws. Under the rule of Napoleon, France was slowly bringing new countries under its control. So, this Napoleonic Code, the civil codes, these very ideas now spread to different parts of the world. Such was seen in the case of Louisiana, Haiti and Argentina. Those are in a different continent, that is the Americas, the North and the South Americas. From this country called France in Europe, the idea of this Napoleonic Code now spread to Louisiana, Haiti and Argentina. So you must be wondering how important this Napoleonic Code was, because so many countries were inspired by this Napoleonic Code. So many countries went on to make their civil code, so many countries went on to make their laws only on the basis of this one Napoleonic Code. So this was a very important document, not just for France but for the entire world. Now after Napoleon came to power, one of the biggest things that he had to control was the economy of France. The French economy had already begun faltering before the French Revolution. We saw how bad harvests, crop failures caused food shortages. Along with that, the French Revolution drained the resources of the French economy. Together, everything posed a threat to the economic stability of the nation of France. Now, taxes were also imposed only on the people of the third estate, and this way the first and the second estates exploited the members of the third estate. These are points that we have already discussed, but we are taking up these points again to understand how Napoleon was giving the French economy a new shape, a new dimension. The first thing he had to do was to stop the arbitrary and unfair taxation system, which is why he imposed taxes that would apply to all the people of France and not just one estate or one group of people. So Napoleon also established the National Bank of France. Through this National Bank of France, Napoleon hoped to be able to recover the French economy. This way, he thought that if there would be one national bank of the country, the French economy will slowly begin to recuperate. France was also knee-deep in financial debts. And by establishing the National Bank of France, Napoleon hoped to recover the war expenses as well. This National Bank of France was also lending money to the people of France so that they can pay off their loans and debts. This way, people were slowly gaining their power over the economy. The economic situation that was faltering previously was slowly coming back to stability. And in this process, France was also reducing its public debts. So, this was another major economic decision on the part of Napoleon. Now, previously there was no codified law. Similarly, there was no National Bank of France. Previously, whenever poor people or the peasants needed money, they had to borrow those amounts from rich money lenders, who would in turn exploit these vulnerable people. Now, with the formation of this National Bank of France, the people of France, even the poorest of the lot, could now take money and keep their money in this bank. So, in this way, they were slowly recovering. The French economy was also in the process of recovery. This National Bank of France also facilitated trade. So, things now started taking a better shape under the leadership of Napoleon. Previously, the onus of paying all the taxes was on the peasants. They had to bear the burden of heavy taxation. Now, when Napoleon came to power, he made this taxation system very equal. It was no longer arbitrary and unequal. So, Napoleon also reduced taxes on the peasants. Now, the peasants were not as heavily taxed as they were prior to the French Revolution. Along with that, the peasants were also freed of feudal allegiances. That is, the feudal lords could no longer extort money from the peasants. The peasants and all the people of France alike would pay similar taxes. The responsibility of paying all taxes and the responsibility of recovering the economy was not on one group of people. Along with making many major decisions, both on the economic and administrative front, Napoleon realized that he required the support of religion with him so that he could make his rule a long-standing one. To make his rule a long-lasting one, he required religion by his side. Prior to the French Revolution, when the estate system was in practice, it was the clergy that comprised the first estate. Now, the first estate or the clergy exploited the members of the third estate. So, during the French Revolution, the Catholic Church of France was closed altogether. Initially, this meant a major revolutionary move to the people of France. But slowly they realized that this was an attack on their religion. Napoleon, cunning and wise as he was, realized that to gain the support and favor of the masses, he would have to be with religion, which is why he revived the Catholic Church of France. So, Napoleon tried to maintain cordial and friendly relations with the church, and in this process he also reinstalled the Catholic Church of France. This is the Catholic Church of France. So, it was under the rule of Napoleon that the Catholic Church of France was again brought into existence. Now, in the beginning of the chapter, we talked about how in the year 1804, Napoleon crowned himself as the emperor. In that official government ceremony, he had called the Pope of the Catholic Church of France. In this way, he made it clear to the people that he was in favor of religion. This way, he also gained the support of the masses, the favor of the masses. Do you know what this image shows you here? This image is a pictorial illustration of the agreement that was signed between the French government and His Highness Pius VII that brought back to being this Catholic Church of France. So, this was a very important religious reform undertaken by Napoleon that both gained him the masses' support as well as strengthened his rule over the people of France. Along with making major decisions, be that on the religious front, on the economic front, or on the administrative front, Napoleon also did many reforms for the people of France. Now, why did Napoleon do these reforms? Because the idea he had in mind was that if he did these reforms for the people of France, they would believe that this is not a power-hungry tyrant. Instead, this is a leader who took into account, who took into consideration the requirements of the masses. So, to strengthen his influence and popularity, Napoleon undertook the construction of roadways, waterways and major monuments. So, when he built new roads, new waterways for the people of France, they understood that This leader was the one who was accountable to the masses, and this leader was the one who took into account the requirements of the masses. What you see here is the Arc de Triomphe that was made by Napoleon. This is a major monument made by him. And if you go to tour the city of Paris, you will be able to visit this architectural marvel. So, these are some of the reforms that Napoleon undertook to maintain his long-standing popularity. Previously, before the French Revolution and during the French Revolution, France was embroiled in political turmoil, in political upheaval. France was a major unstable nation. But it is only under the leadership of Napoleon that France reached new heights. Napoleon gave this country a new dimension. What did he do? He made France a dominant force in Europe. So after Napoleon came to power in France, Napoleon was not just the emperor of France, but the whole continent of Europe came to be known as Napoleon's Europe. Can you imagine how powerful he was, how popular he was, that an entire continent was named after him. An entire continent was called the Napoleon's Europe. This was his popularity. Now this map shows you something that you should try to understand. The territories that are marked in red show you the extent of the French Empire. The territories that are marked in yellow show you the areas that were subject to France. And on the other hand, the territories that are marked in light orange show you the allies of France, as in the friends of France. And the territories that are marked in off-white show you the other empires and countries. Now, Europe is a vast continent, and this entire Europe came to be called the Napoleon's Europe when Napoleon was ruling France. In our subsequent lesson, we will be talking about the unification of Europe under the leadership of Napoleon. That is, how he brought under French control various other countries and territories. How able his leadership was, how many reforms he implemented on the people of France, and how those people responded to his reforms, his policies. These are some of the areas of discussion that will be pertinent in our next lesson. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers, or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it's rewarding too. So register for free now.